Hey everybody, my name is SPAZ and I'm a CD junkie. On this episode of CD Junkie, I'm going to be discussing a band by the name of Daniel Amos. Now, this isn't a person by the name of Daniel Amos. Now, there probably are many people in this world that go by the name of Daniel Amos, but I'm going to talk about a band by the name of Daniel Amos. Now, always in these videos, I like to talk about how I got into the band. And this would put me back to about 1984. I was working at Licorice Pizza, and my friend and my boss, Carlos, knew I liked power pop, new wave, stuff like that, and Beatles and all that stuff. So he said, you know what? You might really like this band by the name of Daniel Amos. And I thought, I'll check him out because, I'm always in search of the lost chord. I'm always in search of new music. It happened, it started back when I was a kid, and it continues to this very day now that I'm a grown man making videos on YouTube. So what I took home and listened to, it was an indie thing. It was a local Christian band because I was from Orange County, and I believe that Daniel Amos at the time were based in Costa Mesa or Orange County. So I took it home and listened to it, and I was blown away. And I thought, what the heck? Listen to these songs. This stuff is great. Some of the songs may have been a little bit harder than I liked, at the time at least. But when they hit those melodies and those harmonies, and some of the songs sounded like ELO, some of it sounded like early 10cc, some of it sounded little hints of maybe 60s rock, just fantastic songs all around, and I was hooked from that moment on. So let's go back to their catalog. Let's go backwards a little bit, and I will take you through their catalog. I'll show you Horrendous Disc when I get to it. But we're going to start now with the very first Daniel Amos album. Came out in 1976, and it's just self-titled, Daniel Amos. This is the deluxe edition. And this right here, I remember my friend Carlos saying, you're not going to like the first two Daniel Amos albums because they are country albums. Well, no, what he told me was country. And that's what I heard. And I'm not really a big country fan. I like some of it, but not really a big fan. So I really didn't investigate it. But what he really meant was, or at least I hope he meant, because what it turned out to be was country rock. It was more like influenced by the Byrds, Sweethearts of the Rodeo, maybe even Michael Nesmith's First National Band, Poco, very early Eagles, even Michael Martin Murphey type, commercial country, and lots of great songs on this album. And, I didn't hear this until much later, obviously, but it's wonderful production by Al Perkins, and it's a great, solid album. That came out in 1976, followed in 1977 by Shotgun Angel. Shotgun Angel is another album that starts as a country rock album. But halfway through the album, it suddenly becomes an early 10cc album. I mean, almost literally. I mean, it just gets really super quirky, weird, melodic, and absolutely wonderful. I could not believe it when I listened to it, when I heard it for the first time, because, the first half of the album has got a lot of great songs. But the second half was like, holy cow, this is such a stylistic change, and it's wonderful. Now, I don't think their fans took to that, because I think their fans wanted them to remain country rock. But that sudden change on the second half of the album sent them in a new direction that they continued to follow for the next 30-something years. And this is the deluxe edition, bonus tracks and bonus material. Then, in 1978, they recorded an album called Horrendous Disc. This is Horrendous Disc. And some people are going to say, oh, horrendous cover. Well, it is what it is. But when you hear this album, like I said, there's hints. It takes that whole early 10cc and adds to it. It adds ELO, a little bit of Badfinger, a little bit of Solo McCartney, and lots of other stuff into the mix. And it is absolutely a fantastic record. This is what sold me on the band, and I've been a fan ever since. Now, like I said, the album was recorded in 78. It wasn't released until 81. Now, this version that I'm holding here is a 2-disc version. contains a whole nother disc of unreleased material, including unreleased songs, which are fantastic. But you can't really get this 2 CD version unless you go and buy the whole hog, which is the 5 CD box set of Horrendous Disc. This album is a legendary album in the Christian rock community. This was a game changer. This is what really propelled them into the minds of serious music listeners and not just their Christian fan base. This is an album that was so far ahead of its time and so with the times that it's just astounding. And you get those two, and you get a live album, and you get more unreleased material and alternate versions and alternate mixes. 5 CDs of wonderfulness called Horrendous Disc. Now, you can't buy this in stores. Of course, you have to go to DANIELAMOS.com, and I certainly recommend it. Now, that album, as I said, recorded in 1978, came out in 1981, followed just a few months later by Alarma. This is an album that actually, again, this is the deluxe edition with bonus material. This is an album that takes their sound into more of a new wave. It still has the same basic elements that Horrendous Disc did, but it's quirkier in some parts, more melodic in others, and it's just a straightforward. I don't want to say power pop, but there's some great moments on this that are just going to blow power pop people's minds. Walls of Doubt is one of the songs that people need to hear. But this is their 1981 album. That album was followed 2 years later by Doppelganger. This really brought them even further into the new wave era. And this is even quirkier and fun, and it does have some slightly dark musical elements. Now, the thing about Daniel Amos is it's obvious they're having fun creating music, and they're really fun to listen to. And this, again, is the deluxe edition with another disc of bonus material. So after Doppelganger came another landmark album for Daniel Amos, Vox Humana. And again, this is the deluxe edition with loads of bonus material. Vox Humana was definitely their closest thing to a synth pop record. A lot more keyboards on here, and great pop. This stuff would have fit in with, KROQ or any of the stations that were playing new wave. But it's quirky, it's fun, but the songwriting's still there. The fun aspect of their music is still there, and it's worlds away from their first album and Shotgun Angel. But yes, just a fantastic fun record. 1986 brought us Fearsome Symmetry, where they actually went under the name DA, and this takes that new wave element but moves into a more rock direction again, toning down on the keyboards and focusing on the guitars again. Great song on here called The Pool. Lots more great material. This was Fearsome Symmetry, came out in 1986. 1987 brought Darn Floor Bigbite, and this is the 2 CD deluxe edition. This is an album that moved away from the keyboards, but still embraced that new sound. A lot of the songs are, 60s rock meets post-punk. And it's very fascinating to hear because it's still pop. It's still Daniel Amos. They have a very distinct sound, probably because most of the songs are sung by Terry Scott Taylor. But this album has a more angular feel to it, strange chord progressions, and from what I understand, it's not one of the most popular Daniel Amos albums, but it's definitely a very interesting new direction for them. They're not afraid to try anything new. That came out in 1987. Very fine album indeed. It took another 4 years before Calhoun came out. Now, Calhoun, it looks like it was released under the name Da. So I guess they're just trying to fool people. Hey, this isn't Daniel Amos, it's Da. But this here was a fantastic return to the more earthy sound. And, there's a lot of influences, they mix the 70s Beatles-esque with their country roots, and it's more of a rootsy, I guess. It's certainly not Americana, but it's more American rock and pop. And there's power pop moments on there. There's psych pop moments on there. Lots of great songs on the Calhoun album. Now, Motorcycle came out in 1993. And see, it's a better version of what they were doing here. An old band member, Jerry Chamberlain, he actually came back and rejoined the band. And this is just chock full of great songs. I mean, we're talking, the thing about Daniel Amos is they use things like the mellotron alongside acoustic and electric, and they just form these songs into just huge pieces of wonderfulness. It's melodic. Again, it's going to appeal to fans of power pop, jangle pop, psych pop, stuff like that. That this is still that more rootsy sound. This is sort of the sound that they've continued with ever since. They're definitely an American band with British influences and a very unique sound. I mean, they sound like no other band, but they also sound very familiar. So then 1994 gave us an album called Bible Land. This tones down that a little bit, goes back to maybe the Calhoun, but a lot of great songs. I don't think that this is as good as Calhoun or Motorcycle, but that's just like saying well, gee, the Quarter Pounder is not as good without cheese. It's like, oh, it's all good. Come on. 1995 brought us Songs of the Heart. This is another strange album for them. This cover was actually taken from a gospel album that came out, I believe, in the 50s or early 60s. And it inspired them to create an album, rename these two people here, and create an album kind of like a travelogue album of them driving Route 66 and discovering new things about, America and about the world and religion and life, and so Terry Taylor takes on the role as a narrator. So a lot of the songs are more like sing speak, and the choruses are sung, but the verses will be sing speak. Almost like telling a story. So Songs of the Heart. It's a good album. Continue the streak of very interesting original albums. And should definitely be heard. But nobody expected Mr. Beekner's Dream. This is a stunner of an album. This was actually initially supposed to be a single record, but they were so creative. They felt so creative in the studio that they ended up recording a double record album. And this is, I would say, as a whole, if somebody's going to get into Daniel Amos and they want to hear something from the later period. I mean, Motorcycle's a great example. But this right here, I don't want to compare it to the White Album. But they take so many different stylistic turns. And, you'll hear a ballad followed by, a heavy guitar rocker, followed by a mid-tempo country-esque song, followed by another ballad. And it's just an absolutely stunning record. Again, I'm not comparing it to the Beatles or the White Album. But if you were going to say, hey, what would Daniel Amos's White Album be? It would definitely be Mr. Beekner's Dream. You definitely need to check that out. That is absolutely wonderful album. That album came out in 2001. Took another 12 years for Dig Here, Said the Angel. And this is yet another stellar album. Now, the songs are longer. They're maybe a little bit moodier. Maybe even a hint of sadness mixed with the joy. This is an album, in a way, about maybe getting older and maybe dealing with the world. See, that's the thing about Daniel Amos is every album, they weren't trying to be the same kids that they were back when they made the Selftitled album in 1976. They grew musically, they grew, they matured, they grew older, and every album reflects that. And Dig Here, Said the Angel was the final album at least to date, by Daniel Amos. It might even be the last album, period, with the death of Tim Chandler, the bass player, last year. But this is fantastic album, and I believe this might even still be on vinyl. You have to check it out at danielamos.com. And that is it with my Daniel Amos collection. I did want to show you a few other things here. There is a best of. This is a collection. I believe there might be another, maybe one or two best ofs, but that's a nice one if you want to get into the band. And also Terry Taylor. He has, he's the lead singer, main songwriter of the band. He has other projects like The Lost Dogs, Swirling Eddies. He's done a lot of things, but I do have a couple of his solo releases. Knowledge and Innocence is fantastic. Lots of wonderful songs on that. A Briefing for the Ascent. Another great Terry Scott Taylor solo album. John Wayne. Another fine slice of Terry Scott Taylor. And a solo best of called Glimpses of Grace that has songs from those albums and a few others. That's all I own by Terry Taylor. But anyway, that's it. On Mixcloud right now, I have a special edition of my Skip Dobbin with Spaz radio show, and it's devoted entirely to the music of Daniel Amos. I feature at least one track from every album, and that's a nice way to go and introduce yourself. And I've got it mixed up. It's not chronological. I've got it in an order that really makes sense. So definitely check that out. And definitely check out the next video whenever I make it. I appreciate you sticking around for this one. And until the next time, my name is Spaz, and I'm a CD junkie.